Hello and welcome to today's Ask the Expert webinar. Today's webinar will explore managing a configured hybrid Catia 3DX/Catia V5 BOM structure in 3DEXPERIENCE 2018X. My name is Casey Smith, and on behalf of Co-Headquarters, I would like to thank you for joining us today. Today's presenter is Rosario DeLallo, Sales Engineer at Mecanica Solutions. For the past 20 years, Rosario has been involved in all aspects of PLM deployment projects for a number of European automotive OEMs. For the past 5 years, he has been assisting Mecanica's growing number of EV startups in optimal use of the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. Just a quick reminder, all attendees are on mute during the webinar. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the broadcast via the questions box found in the GoToWebinar navigation toolbar. All questions will be held until the end of the webinar. I will now go ahead and hand it over to Rosario, and we will dive right in.
Okay, thank you, Casey, and welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us. So a little background of what we're going to show today. So at Mecanica, we have quite a number of 3DX customers, and they range from everything to 13X to 17X and everything in between. So we've been having quite a few questions regarding the new Power BI multi-CAD modules that came with 3DX 18X release. And we developed an internal demo to answer some of these questions that we are receiving from our customers. And we thought it would be a good idea to share with the rest of the co-community. So what I'm going to use today is an 18X Fixpack 1830 release. I think last week 19X CA dropped. So we're already one release behind, if you will, but I think it's very representative of what Power BI is and how it aims to manage Catia V5, SolidWorks, NX, and Creo, and other CAD platforms for which there are connectors. So we are installing a couple of 19X machines this week. So that's why we chose to use this 18X setup. So with 18X compared to 17X, it is, if you will, the first stage of, well, the widgets and the dashboard, which I'm going to show right now, have been around since 16 and 17X, but they have been incremented, and there's a lot more capabilities coming into the widget apps that we're going to see in 18X with respect to the JSP pages, which we were using heavily in 15, 16, and 17X. So the first change, if you will, that comes to mind in the day-to-day use of your 3DEXPERIENCE user, whether he's a CAD user or he's more of a process-minded PLM user, is going to be the use of these dashboards, right? So I logged in directly in this dashboard virtual server that we set up, and I have a series of dashboards that the user can essentially tailor to whatever they use or whatever apps they use on the platform. So we're going to be heavily using the 3D product architect, which will enable us, as we'll see, to view the multi-CAD on the new Catia 3D Compose viewer, to view the bill of materials, to edit it, to modify attributes, and to apply configuration filters. I also have a few here where I basically created a change action dashboard on which I just dragged and dropped the Innovia change action. And just to show you guys how the user can customize its own experience, I have this Relational Explorer dashboard, which has the Innovia Compare app, quite a useful little app. So the way you basically build it is that you create your dashboard and then you drag and drop into it the application which you're interested in. So if I go to the northern quadrant here, I can basically just choose the compare. And when you see this little arrow, it means that it can be pegged into your dashboard. So you just drag it. And this is how you essentially build your own customized dashboard with respect to what you want to do. So I think I even have a little review one, which is a very nifty one. It's basically the Simulia simulation review. So you will have your Simulia authors just basically create the AFM inside of the native client, and via the dashboard, you'll be able to see the result, animate the result, and consume the result. So this is going to be a recurring theme. A lot of what is done with the thick authoring clients, be it V5, SolidWorks, Catia 3DX, Delmia, and whatever, can be consumed with the dashboard on the web top. So we're bringing the user more more and more into the use of the web top, which obviously, if you're an author, you're still going to need to access for the time being your thick clients. But more and more, you're going to have these dashboards, which you will be able to access directly on the web. The beauty of the dashboard with respect to the old JSP pages, they did away with Java. So now they're supposed to run on any platform, right? So I'm running off of a Windows PC, but it will operate properly in iOS or Android or whatever other type of platform. So let's go back to our 3D product architect dashboard. And as the name of the webinar says, we're going to be messing around with Catia 3DX as well as Catia V5 data that has been basically saved into this machine. So we're going to have the product structure and the Catia 3D Compose, which is going to be similar setup to the people who have used the previous versions of 3DX. It's going to be similar to 3D Live Examine being in sync with the product structure that you had in the, for example, Innovia Engineering Management application. So let's just have a generic search for all of my products here. Okay, so I have a series of products here. They are mostly CAD models. So, but as you know, any type of document can be saved and managed in the platform. So you have these 6W tags, which have been enriched with this CAD Master tab. So you can see here that I have some Catia 3DX models as well as some Catia V5 models. And if I filter the Catia V5 models, okay, I'll be able to see everything that was saved as Catia V5 native, right? So in this hypothetical situation, I have either a supplier or a department that is still developing the internal combustion engine, the fuel tank, and the exhaust system. So they are either not willing or don't want to switch to Catia 3DX. So they essentially remained in Catia V5. Their V5 is saved natively inside of the platform. And via the product architect dashboard, I can just simply drag and drop the Catia V5 model inside of the product structure editor. Okay, so I'm going to have my structure as well as the Catia 3D Compose widget, which enables me to see and consume whatever type of CAD element has been created inside of the 3D platform. So if I just open the structure, and this is essentially Power BI, right? So the whole Power BI modules that have been brought into 3DEXPERIENCE are essentially aggregating your XCAD or Catia V5 or SolidWorks or whatever other supported CAD to the existing physical product. So whether you're using Catia 3DX or Catia V5 or whatever other type of supported CAD, you will have the physical product, which will hold the 3D shape. But if I do a properties on these elements, you'll be able to see that the type is still a physical product. So all of these out-of-the-box attributes are visible. And by the way, this is a full out-of-the-box installation, completely vanilla. Nothing has been configured or customized. But the novelty of Power BI is that we are now adding this extension, which tells me that this is a Catia V5 native model, even if it is stored under the physical product. So if you will recall the days of Designer Central, you had like a physical product that could only hold Catia 3DX. You had a type CAD product which could hold a CAD product, SolidWorks Assembly, NX, Inventor, and so on and so forth. So the Power BI module are basically gonna aggregate via the use of this extension all of your supported CADs to your physical product type. Okay, so as this is a V5 assembly, what I could do is that I can essentially, via the Western Quadrant, just launch it straight into Catia V5. So the 3DEXPERIENCE launcher is going to be tasked with being the interface between the platform and your various CAD tools. Okay, so in this case, I basically have my fuel tank native Catia V5 that comes from 3DEXPERIENCE. Here you can also see by this little arrow that I'm working with an older revision, right? So some Catia V5 user created a new revision, and the system is telling me that I'm not working with the latest one. And if I go to the properties, I will be able to see the default OOTB Catia V5 standard attributes, and the other ones are added and they come from the physical product, which is handled in Catia in 3DEXPERIENCE. So obviously this is like unadulterated, straight out of the box. So every single attribute has been tagged on to this Catia V5 model. For other customers, we've customized this so that we only have like a subset of these attributes with like more verbose description with respect to what comes straight out of the database. Okay, so another nice upgrade that we have had with respect to the Designer Central is that you can essentially search directly with the same 3D search of 3DEXPERIENCE. You can search from within the platform everything you need to create your design session. So you have the possibility to search from the web browser and then send it to Catia V5, or you can directly search from within the stored elements which are inside of the 3D platform. Okay, so this is how the Catia V5 native data is managed. So let's go back to our 3D Product Architect dashboard. I'm going to remove this tank, and I'm going to be searching for the root node, which we will be using for this demo. So I have like a Delmia root, which depending on time we might get into, and I have this SUV EBOM. So I'm basically going to drag and drop it inside of the product structure editor. Okay, so I'm going to have my structure. The Catia 3D Compose is going to read all of the associated CAD data. In this case, this vehicle is going to have some Catia V5 data as well as Catia 3DX data. So we're going to have a look at how we manage it. And also, it is a configured structure. So this vehicle is both a hybrid, so it contains V5 and 3DX. Potentially, it could also contain SolidWorks or NX or whatever other supported CAD you wish to use. And on top of that, we are dealing with a configured structure. So if I peek under the hood of this via the compose widget here, right, I can see that this would be what is normally called the 150% BOM, right? So you can see that I have an internal combustion engine setup, a partial internal combustion engine setup, along with an electric motor. If you look at the interior, I have right-hand drive and left-hand drive configuration with a couple of seat options. Okay, and we can see here that I have a couple of different wheel options, as well as the whole electric powertrain versus the traditional internal combustion powertrain. Okay, and in the same way, just to go a bit further into the new goodies that come with 3D Compose with respect to 3D Play or 3D Live Examine, is that I can essentially examine the structure or how it was built, right? So it's similar to the turn tables you have in Catia 3DX or the new experience, which looks a bit like that. So you can basically drill down into structure and have a more holistic view. So quite nice if you want to have an idea of how the product was structured and how the configuration manager was put essentially the options on the link. So if I look at these wheels here, okay, you can see that on the same node, I'm going to have a 22-inch option with fatter tires, as well as a 22-inch standard option, if you will. So it's a nifty little way via the 3D Compose that I can just navigate the structure of my vehicle to have a quick visual idea of how the various modules and submodules were structured. You also have, which is a total novelty, you can basically do some positioning either by dragging and dropping from one axis to the other, as well as using the robot as you would directly in Catia V5 or V6, right? So there's quite a lot of functionalities in doing some mock-up management. So I could position, I could basically, as we'll see with the product structure when we get to it in a few seconds. So Catia 3 Compose brings a lot of added functionalities. It has some basic product structure review or mock-up review, such as the sectioning, which I'm illustrating here. And also, you can see here, this is quite interesting, you can essentially create some points, some axes, and some very simple pads and features. So the writing's on the wall when it comes to 3D Compose, and I think in the next releases we will see more and more basic CAD functionality migrating directly onto the web, right? So with 19x and 20x, it is quite possible that Catia 3D Compose will have more and more of these native CAD functionality to permit, at least initially, a very limited subset, which will grow later on, of CAD authoring functionalities directly on the web, which obviously is quite interesting. So let me go put our hood and my glass here back in view mode so I can have like a nicer view for you guys. Okay, now right hand, we did the Catia 3D Compose. This is obviously linked a la 3D Live Examine to the bill of material, right? So this is all associative, so I can choose it to have an idea of what CAD corresponds to the mockup, right? So I have also the possibility to edit my physical products. So if I hit the pencil here, I'm in editing mode, so I can modify the products which are obviously modifiable. I can't modify the creation date. And had there been added attribute, you would be able to list them here and to modify these added attributes that we do for pretty much every 3DX implementation. I can also see the effectivities and change the effectivities for the configuration, as well as see and manage if these physical products have been released via change management. And you have a lot of what primarily existed before on the native client for promoting, for modifying the structure. So you can see here that I can add a new product or a new part. I can essentially update with the latest revision. And if I go to the life cycle, I can also do what was the collaboration applications that I had on a native client. So some of those functionalities have migrated to these dashboard. And I think as we proceed with 18x, 19x, 20x, we'll see more and more of these functionalities, especially for bill of material management, that will migrate onto the web. They will still be obviously available in the native client, but more and more will migrate into the web. So if I do and expand all of my structure, so this would be the unfiltered, unconfigured structure. So I still have all of my bill of material, and I can obviously export to Excel, which every one of our customer relies heavily on, because Excel is still very prevalent and in good health over the PLM world. So this would export my unconfigured 150% bill of material, and obviously I can modify what attributes I choose to export. Okay. So another functionality that has migrated from the native client. And if I have a look at my mockup here and I activate the 6W tags, obviously I have various maturities, but what is of interest to us is this whole CAD master. So you can see that if I color code it, I'm going to have the bulk of the vehicle, which is yellow, which has been designed in Catia 3DX, but the legacy internal combustion engine modules, which are part of this mockup, are essentially blue, which tells me that they have been created in Catia V5. So I haven't gone to the trouble of doing an FBDI of importing in Catia 3DX. I essentially left them as Catia V5 native, so they can keep on evolving, they can keep on being modified, revised, or what have you, by my group of Catia V5 designers, whether they're my suppliers or an internal department, doesn't matter. So if I center the tree on this part of the exhaust system, okay, I can see that it's still a physical product, just like any other Catia 3DX element, but I have this nice little icon, which I can discriminate and say that these are all Catia V5 elements, whereas where I see the compass, this is Catia 3DX native data. Okay, so this would be my full unconfigured vehicle. So I'm going to take away the color. And interestingly enough, even if this is a hybrid mockup and the top levels and my system and my modules are basically done in Catia 3DX with physical product, I can still send them to Catia V5 via the Power by modules. So again, I'm going to send this whole structure to Catia V5. I'm using R27 here, but I think I'm pretty sure that the R21 is the earliest supported version. So you have quite a leeway into which type of release of Catia V5 you want to mate to Catia 3DX, to the 3DEXPERIENCE platform. So as it's fishing the information off of the database, it will basically load the root node of the vehicle directly inside of Catia V5. Let's just give it a few seconds. Okay, so we will be able to see here in a few seconds that all of my internal combustion engine modules that are part of this mockup, and they are Catia V5 native, have loaded. But I was also able to load the whole bill of material of the vehicle, right? So if I go to the exterior design, which you will recall was all yellow, therefore all Catia 3DX native, I will have all of the skeletal structure all the way down to the terminal nodes. But obviously, since this was Catia 3DX, I am not able to see the 3D model that is assigned to it. But if I go into my powertrain, which is where all of my legacy V5 data lives, if I expand the internal combustion engine system, this is where I find my native Catia V5 CAD products and CAD parts, which have been saved into the system. So it is quite nice to have the whole bill of material loaded, even if I can only see Catia V5. So what would be really nice would be to have the platform generate maybe a CGR or some other form of tessellated model with which a Catia V5 designer could basically open the whole vehicle, even if the bulk of it would be in Catia 3DX or SolidWorks, because in the background, I would have a derived output, so to speak, that would have the CGR. So Dassault R&D has been made. We have made this request to the SR&D. So hopefully in a couple of releases, we get to see like a full hybrid mockup that you can see in whichever CAD tool you mate to Catia 3DX. But for the time being, you can just load the bill of material and your whole Catia V5 data. Okay. So let's go back to our web interface. And let's talk about configuration. So we've seen up to now that this vehicle, this SUV, is a hybrid V5 Catia 3DX model. There is a configuration tab, so I can do the whole configuration aspect. I can configure the structure on both the web, on the dashboard, or on the native client. If I go onto the root here, I'll be able to see that there is a model or a configuration dictionary or corporate dictionary, semantics vary, that is assigned to this structure. And the whole foundation of the configuration of the corporate configuration strategy was done by the product manager, who is still using the variant management application. So just so you have a clearer idea of the whole configuration filters we will apply, let's just go have a little quick snoop at the variant management application. You can see that this is still a JSP page. So I do not believe it's been ported on 18X yet on a dashboard, but all the work can be done on the JSP page. We'll have to check if 19X has a dashboard that is dedicated to the variants. But regardless, I have a series of products, including my SUV model. So if I open up my SUV model, you can see that this SUV model belongs to a product line that we created for our little show and tell. And the product line essentially has a Cabrio, a Coupe, a Sedan, and an SUV model underneath it. Then under the SUV model, I have so-called product evolution from concept initiation to start of production, which you can also use to configure. But we won't cover this due to time constraint in this little demo that we have today. So if I go underneath my SUV model, I'll have a series of configuration features. So I've only created 6 configuration features for this demo, but obviously in an industrial environment such as our automotive clients that use 3DX and variant management, you would have hundreds of configuration features and potentially thousands of configuration options. So underneath all of these configuration features, I have a series of options. So if I just click on the market, Okay, you can see that I defined the China, EU, India, USA, and other markets. So these are the options that are going to be used by the links of the 150% bill of material to be able to apply a configuration feature. And especially for industrial cases where you have like thousands of potential options, and why not even a mix and match of options, of evolutions, of dates, of units, or what have you, you would most likely have a set of configuration rules by which you can help the consumer of your options and your variance definition that I am doing as a product manager. So I would basically say if somebody chooses the India market, well, they won't be able to choose left-hand drive. And for a hypothetical reason for this scenario, I can't sell an internal combustion engine. I can only sell EVs in India. So I would have these rules, okay? So this is gonna be the bedrock of all of the downstream modules which will be using this configuration logic. So still done on variant management, which has been around for quite some time now. So how do I use all of this foundational configuration elements? I can obviously use it as I could until 17x inside of the native client. With 18x and later releases, I can use it on both the web top as well as the native client. And as we'll see in a second, with Catia V5 data, as well as with Catia 3DX and SolidWorks or any other type of supported XCAD. Okay, so let's go back to our structure here and let's go apply a configuration filter. So I'm just going to choose the top level one. I'm going to go into the tools. I'm going to have my configuration filter, and we'll see how this behaves in the native client later. So at this point, let's give it a second to load. Okay, so I'm going to add a configuration criteria. Okay, as I choose configuration, as we saw, this top level product is assigned to my SUV model. So I have already a product configuration, actually two product configuration defined for this particular bill of material. So I'm going to choose the European Union internal combustion sport level. So a product configuration is essentially an aggregate of configuration features and options. So you can see that when I select the EU internal combustion, I have all of these options which are going to be applied on the unconfigured route. So to apply this specific vehicle configuration, I'm just going to hit apply. Okay, so I'm going to see a little filter on top of my root node. Okay, so this is going to be my configured structure, and he will load the configured 3D mockup. So this is another big advantage that I can essentially configure, and I could visualize, and I can do sectioning, I can do design reviews without having to have a CAD license, right? I can do everything directly from the web, regardless of the platform. So he's got 350 parts to load. Let's give it a few seconds to finish loading, and then we'll go see if these options match, right? So you can see that I had the big 22-inch wheels, check. I had the internal combustion engine, check, because I have the exhaust and the fuel tank. If we peek inside, I have the 4-seater setup, right? And since this is for the EU, I have the left-hand drive version, right? So everything seems to check. And if I activate again my CAD master tag filter here, okay, I'll be able to see that all of these blue elements are part of this configured structure. So in this case, the bulk of this car is yellow, therefore it's designed in Catia 3DX, but it could also be a fully Catia V5 mockup. So I could implement 3DEXPERIENCE. I could choose not to use Catia 3DX because it's not in my corporate plans. And I could have all of my designers working in Catia V5 or SolidWorks. And I could use 3DX to essentially filter this structure entirely made up of Catia V5 options. And then by, like I did previously, sending it to V5 via the Western quadrant, I can essentially loads my European Union vehicle inside of Catia V5 to do all types of design analysis, clash analysis, and some authoring if I do discover some clashes, right? So this is a major advantage that we were never quite able to do with Smart Team, made it with Catia V5. And in a previous experience, even with Windchill with Catia V5, it was quite the nightmare to have a behavior such as we are seeing here back in the days. So let's get rid of this filter here, so we lose the color coding. Okay. And in the same way, okay, I can apply a different configuration. So if I go back to the configuration, actually, sorry, I have to go back to the filtering here. So I can just edit what I have here. And I'm just gonna delete this element here, and I'm gonna choose a different configuration. So let's say that I go for the full EV version of this car. So I have a brand new set of configuration options, which corresponds to my India EV market. And if I apply it, the system will essentially filter my structure with respect to this set of options. Okay, so 3D Compose is loading the filtered structure. So the first step was to filter the structure. Second step, load the CAD corresponding to the filtered structure. So you can see here that I have fewer parts because I'm not loading all of those internal combustion engine bits. So you can see here that I have the smaller wheels. If I peek inside, I have the 5-seater configuration with a left-hand drive setup, right-hand drive, should I say. And if I peek under it, you can see here that I have the big battery together with the EV. So this is one way to essentially choose some predefined configuration. So especially when I have a very large configuration options, the product manager is most always going to give me some predefined configuration. However, if I want to mix and match and I want to create my own configuration to do whatever type of analysis on a setup of the bill of material that does not exist, so a Frankenstein vehicle that's never going to be made, I could choose my own setup. So let's say that I want to see how the 80 kilowatt hour battery is going to behave. I can say that it's going to be an India market. So all of this configuration feature are available here, and I'm going to choose each and every one of them to create an ad hoc configuration. So let's say that I want the big wheels, I want the ICE powertrain, but since I put a corporate configuration rule that says that I can't sell an internal combustion engine to India, I won't be able to select it because the rules apply here, starting from the variant management configuration. So I'm going to choose the only option that I have here, which is EV. I'm going to choose the 4-seater sport. And again, I'm going to have to choose right-hand drive because my rules tell me that India is not allowed to receive a left-hand drive vehicle. Okay, so I've created my ad hoc configuration, and in the same logic, I'm gonna apply it. Okay, so he's gonna filter the structure with this new set of ad hoc options, right? So the structure has been filtered, and the information is being transferred to the Catia 3D Compose viewer. So you can see that the number of parts that I load are changing with respect to any configuration. Okay, and here you can basically see when it finishes loading. Let's be patient. Yes, I'm going to apply it again. Yeah, this fix pack has a little glitch here, so bear with me, if you will. Okay, so I'm expecting to see the big wheels with the small battery pack with the other limited number of options that I selected. Here it is, 336 parts. Okay, so here is my non-existent product configuration that the company doesn't sell, but as a CAD designer or as a product reviewer or a marketing person, I wanted to have a look at it, never touched the CAD system. So you can see that I have the big wheels and I have the small battery here. Okay, so this is the novelty with 18X, is that more and more native client exclusive functionalities have been ported onto the web top via the use of the dashboard, right? So if you want to have this configuration, you must come to the product structure editor and other dashboards that have this capability. If you were to go on the traditional JSP pages, you wouldn't be able to have this behavior, right? So this is one way that I could come to my root node, apply a configuration, and then decide to open it in Catia V5 or SolidWorks or what have you. Or if I have a hybrid mockup and when I want to see all of this CAD data, regardless of where it comes from, then I would basically open it inside of Catia 3DX. And let's do that. I'm going to start afresh. I'm just going to go search for my root. Okay, so I'm going to reload the unconfigured one. And instead of sending it to Catia V5, I'm going to send it to Catia 3DX. So the way I do that, I go to the northern quadrant and I just select from my favorite apps an application that I know resides in Catia 3DX. So let's say that I send it to Product Finder. Okay, so 3DEXPERIENCE launcher is going to come into play, and this is going to launch a session of Catia 3DX, right? So a way of working with 18X is that you just start your session on the web, especially if you're using Catia V5, right? You just make your environment, you configure your design environment, and then you open it via the web browser inside of Catia V5. Obviously, if you are using Catia 3DX or Delmia or whatever other thick client that's on the platform, you'll be able to do everything directly from a Catia 3DX session, as I'll show in a few seconds once my 3DEXPERIENCE thick client or native client launches. Okay, so you can see that since I already had configuration on the root node, he's asking me to open one of the N existing product configuration. Just for argument's sake, I'm just going to say that I'm going to open it without any configuration. So he will basically load the 100% bill of material that we saw before in the native client. And since I'm in Catia, I'll be able to see all of my unconfigured bill of material, just as I did when I was on the web, right? So again, the fully 150% bill of material. If I expand the structure, I will obviously find the same systems, the same subsystems. Okay, and I kept it choose the turntables here. If I wanted to have a view similar to what we saw on the web when I was basically severing the mockup, there's another product finder view that will give you this, but I personally like the old school turntables here. So as we saw, this system is a hybrid of Catia V5 and Catia 3DX. Let's go open this one. So for people new to Catia 3DX, you have the product finder, which would be loosely like a Catia V5 DMU when you do your product analysis, your mockup review, your measurements and whatever. And you can directly open what you see in the product finder inside of a Catia 3DX session where you will have full authoring capability. So what I'm doing here, I'm going to open my powertrain modules, which contains both V5 and Catia 3DX native data, right? So I have this element over here. I have, similar to the 6W tag, I have a filter that will easily enable me to understand what is V5, what is 3DX. So as we recalled, everything that is related to the internal combustion engine is V5. Everything that is part of the EV powertrain is going to be Catia 3DX. So with this color code, I can see that the blue stuff is Catia V5 and the gray stuff is Catia 3DX. And if I open one element of Catia V5, you can see that they're all physical products, right? So I'm not dealing with CAD products or SolidWorks assembly. I'm dealing with like exclusive physical products. And if I open this 4-cylinder engine head, which was basically Catia V5, you can see that underneath the 3D part, I'm going to have the 3D shape, and I'm going to have this no entry element, which is going to tell me it is a 3D shape, but it is a Catia V5 3D shape. So even if the system has exposed the design features underneath it. Since it's Catia V5 native, well, obviously, if I want to open it or if I find a clash with it and I want to modify it, well, I'm going to have to open it in Catia V5 to author it. Whereas if I open one of these batteries here, which is completely Catia 3DX native, the 3D shape is going to be a regular 3D shape, and all of the elements are basically going to be exposed, and they are authorable, provided I have the necessary security clearance. So the nice thing about having V5 and Catia 3DX inside of the platform and using the native client is that I can essentially treat them in many respects in an identical way, right? So if I take this and I launch, just for argument's sakes, a clash analysis, the system will not discriminate with Catia V5 or Catia 3DX. So if I launch an interference check on this hybrid product, they will be recognized as physical products, and they will be treated as physical products as far as the result goes. So if I have my clash analysis of this hybrid thing, you can see that as I click on it, I will find some clashes that have to do with bits of the engine that are made in Catia V5 and this electric motor, which is Catia 3DX, right? So the system is treating both of them identically. I won't do it here because of time constraints and license constraints, but I could also take this V5 native engine head, mesh it, and basically do a simulation analysis, even if it's in Catia V5. So that's one of the great advantages of using V5 on 3DX, is that I can basically do some 3DX processes such as simulation and Delmia, as I'll show in a few minutes, directly with Catia V5 native data. So unlike what some of our other customers had to do in the past, you have no need to take this CAD product and FBDI it in to transform it into Catia 3DX to be able to leverage the capabilities of the platform on V5 native data, right? If you have people that are unwilling or cannot start using Catia 3DX, like especially some European design houses, they insist on using Catia V5. Well, this would be a good setup by which they continue designing in Catia V5 and you just consume their data by leaving them native. So a lot of less headaches by not transforming heterogeneous CAD data inside of Catia 3DX. So another really great thing that Dassault did when it comes to coexistence of V5 and V6 is that, let's say I go to the internal combustion engine module or system, which is made entirely of Catia V5 data. I can come in and I can insert a 3D part, which is going to be a purely Catia 3DX 3D part. So nothing to do with Catia V5. It's completely Catia 3DX native. And if I activate the 3D shape, I'll be able to leverage the exposed feature of the Catia V5 model to actually use them in my design. So I'm going to do something extremely simple, right? I'm just going to choose this diameter here, and I'm going to put it inside of my Catia 3DX sketch. So the feature is recognized. And I can now make a super simple pad here, just for argument's sakes again, right? So you can see that I am spawning a Catia 3DX element with a sketch that is basically referencing a Catia V5. Okay, and I can also have associativity in the sense that if I or somebody in my organization modifies this diameter by increasing it or whatever and saves it back into 3DEXPERIENCE, I will be able to update my 3DX model so that it follows the modification that have been done by groups of my organization that essentially do not use Catia 3DX. So it's a great way to have V5 and 3DX coexist in the same environment. So let's go back to our mockup here. Okay, and I just want to show you how I would configure this element, right? So I'm going to put it together. This is my 150% bill of material. So how do I configure it? Same logic, slightly different interface. Potentially this will be made uniform in both CATIA side and dashboard side. So again, I can choose like a predefined product configuration. So these are the same as the one that I used in variant management, right? So as I said before, variant management is leveraged by everything else that is downstream. So again, if I choose my European Union internal combustion engine with the V5 data, I can just apply it. Okay, so the system is basically gonna filter my structure in the same way that I filtered it inside of the product structure. And obviously, if I just want to open it, do some sectioning and have a look at how things fit together, I would remain inside of the Explore or Product Finder. But if I am a designer and I want to work on this specific product configuration to do some authoring, I could just like open it directly into CATIA 3DX. All right, so the whole filtering operation, I can do it on CATIA 3DX like I just did, and then open it in CATIA 3DX, or I can do it on the dashboard, filter it, and then I have a choice to either send it to CATIA V5 or send it to CATIA 3DX. In this case, I'm using a configured bill of material with both V5 and 3DX data. So obviously, I'm going to have to open it in CATIA 3DX to have all of the multicad showing in one single environment. For the time being, you can open 3DX data in CATIA V5. And as I said earlier, hopefully this changes. Okay, so this would be my configured mockup, my configured structure with all of the options that I had. And again, this is the CATIA V5 and CATIA 3DX module that work together. So I can see that we're already up to the 46th minute of the hour. So just very, very quickly, because this is of interest to many of our customers which are moving into production. The same V5 data and the same configuration data can also be leveraged by Delmia, right? So I have like an SUV root context here. If I open it up, and if we're gonna have time for some questions, I'm gonna be real quick about this. So I opened this PPR context and I created an MBOM starting from the EBOM, which we have been working on so far. So let's go have a look again very rapidly at what this looks like. So this PPR concept is consuming or using my CATIA 3DX data, my CATIA V5 data, as well as my configuration data. Okay, so here you can see that I have the SUV EBOM, which is what we've been working on so far. It is linked with an MBOM, which in turn is not linked, but should be linked to my process BOM, right? So everything I did is the MBOM. So if I now open the bill of material, the manufacturing bill of material, should I say, you can see here that I have configured structures by which I use the CATIA V5 elements. So as you recall, all of the internal combustion powertrain module here was made up of CATIA V5. So Delmia can consume my CATIA V5 models. And if I go back to the wheels, okay, the wheels were fully CATIA 3DX, but I have these options of the 20-inch wheels or the 22-inch wheels. And with the same logic, so just let's open the powertrain. Okay, you can see that the ICE is here. So these are basically my V5 models. And if I open up the manufacturing bill of material, I have my manufacturing items together with my provided parts. So very simple manufacturing bill of material. So the way I reuse the configuration, which I had defined in variant management, I can just go into authoring and I can apply the filter to the PPR context. So what I'm doing here is that I'm going to reuse what my product manager created for me, which is going to be the product configuration. So now I can say, okay, apply the internal combustion engine vehicle to the EBOM and apply the internal combustion engine vehicle to the MBOM also. So as soon as I apply it, I'm going to be able to configure my hybrid CATIA 3DX, CATIA V5 EBOM coupled with my hybrid MBOM, right? So you can see that now if I go into the mechanical groups of the EBOM and I open the wheels, I only have one choice of wheels. and this is reflected in the MBOM. So MBOM consumes EBOM, but it also consumes CATIA V5 data, CATIA 3DX data, and consumes the centrally defined configuration of the corporate dictionary. Okay, so again, a very big argument with very little time. So I am pretty much finished. Casey, if you want to open it for discussions.
Sure. Thank you, Rosario. The reminder, you can submit your questions for this question and answer portion through the questions box on your GoToWebinar navigation toolbar. We haven't had any questions come in yet, so we'll give them a couple minutes to submit some questions.
Okay, and as of interest to your gang here, if you go on our Mecanica Solutions site, we have like a media tech section where we put all of our demo videos similar to what we've seen today. So if you guys are interested, you can have a look at this demo as well as others directly in our Mecanica Solution video on our site. So I'm thinking questions are few and far between.
Yeah, maybe your presentation was just so seamless that no one has any questions.
Thank you.
Just had one come in, Rosario.
Ah, cool.
If I can't load V6 models in CATIA V5, it means I can't author in V5, right? I cannot position the parts.
No, if you want to position the parts of CATIA V6 and you do not, well, it depends. If you don't have CATIA V6, you wouldn't even have CATIA native data, but you can position V5 directly inside of the web, right? And then you can open it in CATIA V5. Or if it's a fully CATIA V5 model, well, obviously you can open it up and position it inside of CATIA V5. But if you have a hybrid mockup such as myself with CATIA V5 and CATIA 3DX, then you could position either on the web or in CATIA 3DX. So you have to have obviously CATIA 3DX to position CATIA 3DX. So depending on what CAD tool you have, you would use CATIA 3DX. So if I take it to the extreme, I could also be a completely CATIA V5 shop, but I have a very simple DMU equivalent license of CATIA 3DX. So I couldn't author any of my V5 in CATIA 3DX, but I could position my V5 in my CATIA 3DX with just the DMU license, the basic license. So there's a lot of mix and matching going on.
Okay. We'll give it a couple minutes. Anyone have any last minute questions, and then we'll wrap this up.
It is a big subject to cover in 45 minutes, but anyways, if you guys want any more, if you want to dive deep into any one of the topics that I've covered extremely rapidly, feel free to drop us a line on our web or in my personal email.
Okay, and if anyone has any questions, you can also send them into the CO headquarters inbox, co@co.org, and we can forward those on to Rosario, and we can also post those alongside the webinar on the CO website. So that concludes today's Ask the Expert webinar. We'd like to thank everyone for participating today, especially Rosario DeLallo and the Mecanica team for an informative and educational presentation. A recording of this webinar will soon be available on co.org. And thank you again for attending today's Ask the Expert webinar, and have a great day.
Thank you, Casey. Bye-bye.